Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one, the only ICP. Listen, today we are going to be breaking down the thing I want to break down for ICP, which is how identical the structure looks in recent times compared to pretty much the last cycle's structure, right? We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the pump and sell aftermath. Where is ICP going to hold? Is it going to be reversing? What's up with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin just did hit below $90,000 recent times. So what's happening there? And we are going to talk about if still 20, 30, 50, 70, $100 ICP is still viable during altcoin season. Okay, listen here, right? We're going to break this down first. We can see, first of all, when we're on the weekly, right? When we go all the way back, we can see we have one top here, another top here, right? When we go look at the more recent structure over the last 2 years, let's just say we have one top here and another top here. And in fact, you could even debate that this area over here and this area over here is pretty much the equivalent of these two areas, where this one is just slightly higher than this. And, this one is just barely slightly higher than this, but it's also higher than these last 2 points, right? So we can see, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So we have this type of structure. We can see that we kind of had this support zone over here, right? Kind of had a support zone over here. We sold off. We sold off. We kind of struggled and went sideways for some time. We kind of struggled and went sideways for some time. And then we sold off. And then guess what? We sold off. We last time took out the lows, right? Last time we took out the last relevant lows for ICP. We take out the last relevant lows for ICP this time around, right? And then we start going up. And then we start going up. Now, I don't know. You tell me, right? You tell me if this does not look pretty much near identical. Because for me, this is pretty much a 1-for-1. Other than the amount of time it took, right? This is a 1-for-1. And the reason why this took more time to play out is because last time, right, from these lows, we went from 260 all the way to $20. This time from these lows of 350, let's just say, we're expecting to at least at the bare minimum as a garbage cycle go to $30, if not higher, upwards of 50 and even upwards of 90, while it's still being super realistic. Okay, and that is the truth. That is the truth. Okay. And yeah, we pretty much are following the same thing. I know people believe, well, if people just held together and we're all a team and we can make the price hold, and it's just not true. It's just not true. Okay, that's just not the reality. That was never the reality. Maybe for a very small meme coin in the beginning that gets launched, sure, that might be the truth. But the truth is, for something like this is all institutional, this is all manipulation, and this is all calculated. I pretty much showed you something near identical and the way it played out, right? Just like I said, just took a little bit longer because obviously price went up higher. And once there's more money involved, the cycles overall take a little bit longer. But we can see generally, right? If we take it from, let's just say, from this point to the bottoms, it took, 602 days. When we take it from this point to the bottoms, I guess actually technically, when you look at it from that standpoint, right, it's almost near identical. It actually literally I thought this was shorter because I was only counting it from these 2 points. When we actually include the other points, right? When you actually include the other points, actually makes a lot of sense. Actually, like it actually all makes sense. So, uh, yeah. So I mean, coincidence. I don't know. Maybe not. Right? Maybe not. I mean, technically, actually, this makes the most amount of sense. If we take it from these last 2 points to the bottom, it took 230 days. If you take it from these last 2 points to the bottom, it took 580 days. So never mind. Never mind. The time is not the same. But overall, right? Sure, it takes longer, but we can expect bigger pumps. When we were down here, even like down here at 250, 354 bucks, when people were saying $20 ICP, they were saying, no, wait, we're going to go back to $6, maybe seven, maybe eight if we're lucky. And then we can see we actually pumped all the way up here. Now people are saying the same thing. We'll be lucky to go back to 14. We'll be lucky to go back to 20. And I personally disagree. I think ICP this time around is pretty much going to create a nice, very big pump, but it's going to be much higher than it was last time. Right? I do believe we will be hitting at least all of these three order blocks. And for me, we should kind of smash this one of $30. I do believe we should be going upwards of at least 50. But for me, ultimately, I am looking at this order block here of 70 to 75 bucks and potentially sweeping these relevant highs of 2021. Now, of course, technically in 2021, we have these highs over here, but in terms of market cap, that would be an insane amount to reach. So for me, in terms of the most recent relevant structure, this is the most fair that we would be looking to be taking out this cycle, which means ICP to $90 is on the table for me, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously, when things will be pumping in the moment, and based off my skill and my knowledge, if I see ICP kind of, stopping and showing reversal signs at 45, 50 bucks, then I'll just be cashing out there. It's as simple as that. I will be adjusting my game plan. But in terms of just pure prediction, I do think $90 is more than reasonable. And we go and look at something like ICP now, right? If we went up 20x, which would be a 60 billion market cap, actually, no, we don't even need to go that high. 30 billion market cap right now would be $57. Okay, $57. 60 billion would be a little bit more than $110, right? So for me, we would be looking at that 45 to 50 billion market cap peak, which I think that's more than realistic for a project like ICP in the peak of altcoin season, in the peak of money coming in. I think that's more than possible. Remember, not every project is going to pump at the same time. You know, we have a couple here pumping, couple here, couple here, couple here. Everyone gets their turn. Some cryptos pump and peak a little bit earlier. Some pump and peak in the middle, some pump and peak towards the end. But it usually all happens within a two to 3 month span. But the point is money rotates. So it makes things actually easier for us, right? It makes things easier for us. So I actually think it's very, very possible. And we can see volume is still incredibly high, right? Volume is still incredibly high. Well, what about the short term now, right? We talked about how structure looks near identical. We talked about how, you know, in terms of, where we can be hitting this cycle. We talked about those prices. Now let's talk about ICP, because we talked about ICP a couple of days ago, and we pretty much said how there was no real reversal signs. And we did say that we're looking at this zone practically right over here. And we can see, right, as of right now, we are showing a decent amount of reversal signs, nothing too crazy. If you did just blindly buy the bottom of this range, just say even bottom here, you would have made upwards of 25% flip. When we go and look at something like the daily candles, we have created this type of order block candle right over here. So we would want to see something like this play out where we kind of tap in, respect this, and go higher. That doesn't mean it's automatically going to be happening. Okay, let's just say this right away. Doesn't mean it's automatically going to be happening. In terms of the weekly, right? Obviously, we expected a sell-off last week because we did have a nice pump in the beginning of November, and then usually a sell-off follows. And we can see we are seeing a decent recovery right now. The thing is, Bitcoin is struggling a lot, generally speaking, right? When we go and look at something like Bitcoin, it has kind of went down to even 89,000 at one point, and it has been very, very bearish, generally speaking. It did fill up a CME gap, so that is very, very good. But overall, I expect Bitcoin to be decently bearish over now and the next month. And I've been even saying that in the private community for many, many weeks now, right? Many, many weeks I've been saying that. We can go and look at something like ICP. We can see the monthly candle is a rejection. But I think as long as we close above, the 5.2, so the $5.25 zone, we will be good because we would be creating a higher high. Ultimately, though, when we go look at the bigger picture, right, we are already creating a low and a higher high on the 3 month. So that's very nice. On the 6 month, the same thing as well, a low and a higher low. And then on the yearly, right, we had a very, very bearish year. So I don't expect the biggest of biggest rejections, generally speaking. right? We did take out the all-time bottoms. And overall, next year, I expect a massive, massive green candle for ICP to take out multiple points, right? At least at the bare minimum, 21 bucks, and at least on this yearly candle, 38 bucks, right? And that's like the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum. But yeah, that is going to be ultimately though, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.